We go live with Tarek William Saab, but let's listen what he's saying.
You have studied it as diplomats. What is taking Venezuela as a land of trials for the hybrid war? I prefer to call it the hybrid war as a fourth generation war. The hybrid war includes, obviously, intents of civil war, massification of sanctions to automatically produce migration, exodus due to the sanctions, juridical war imposed through institutional aids, the legislative power to its juridic power. In the case of Venezuela, there was an attempt in the 2017 year where I was defending the people, president of the Republican Council. I denied to play that game. Apart from that, obviously, the most terrible was a systematic heat, minute after minute, year after year, of messages, totally distorted of a truth, of a reality that goes directly not to the eyes of a human being, but to their mind, to change their way of thinking and disinformate. It's to attack consciously their conscience, even if they're children. It's incredible how a 2-year-old child is capable of handling a telephone, a computer, and work with social media. But also, in comics, we can see this. They have used the image of Nicolás Maduro, the president, as an object in the games of attack and murder, using the image of the president itself. We cannot avoid this because it makes no sense to imagine that what happened before July the 28th, during this day and after this day, was a causal fact, was something exceptional. I would say it is part of this trial land, which is qualified in a simple way. It's like in a giant mixer, in the case of Venezuela, introduced in this mixer all of the forms and ways of the hybrid war at the same time: the lawfare, brainwash, an attempt of messages of hate, discrimination. In Asia, a political group, the attempt of juridic war, sublimation of military force, police force. There's an important representation of European countries here, which has caught my attention. That they say that the Venezuelan case has nothing to do with the attacks of fascism. This attack that we have got during this 25 years, that even were successful, with a fascist, it imposed a dictator to read and sign 300 people that communication. Mistress Maria Corina Machado signed that I'm talking about April 13, 2022. And a brutal repression came from that, and several people died. Hundreds of people's houses were robbed. I was kidnapped during 2 days without a reason. President Hugo Chavez suffered an attempt of murder. Then ask me and answer yourselves. Since that moment, the oil sub and the action of 2014, there were examples of civil war with a fascist character. What is the content of fascism? It's the search for extermination to eradicate a human group. In this case, they have qualified it, disappear and exterminate the Chavism. Then I don't know how we're still discussing that all this that I'm saying has caused hundreds of deaths. And there is something even worse. In the hybrid world, there's use of common criminals to achieve a final objective, which is, in this case, eradicate a legitimate government. Therefore, all of this that I'm saying, Venezuela has lived it in previous occasions. But there's a topic we cannot avoid. After 2017, one of the worst moments, there were facts. For example, in the middle of the civil war of the 2017 war, that lasts all the months of April, June, and July, 120 days of attacks. Some European representatives don't believe it. Attacks to what? To people that were burned alive, including civils, militaries, and police force. Not only Armando Figueras, whose murderer is in Spain. And we have asked for an extradition order to the government, which was annullated. This person lives in Spain after burning Orlando Figueras. But the report of the people showed that there were approximately 40 people burned alive in the same way that Orlando was burned in several states. One of the worst was Lara State. In the middle of this, there was a bet for lawfare for juridic war using the people's power. They use also armed force to derogate the government. And when we thought that all that was the worst of the worst, then August the 4th came, an attempt of magnicidio using drones. Tell me, isn't it that a Nazi method? Obviously, the objective was to kill the President of the Republic. But the high power, political and military of the nation, I calculate that around 100 people could have been murdered that day. The great new channels of the Western Hemisphere have confirmed that that was an attempt of magnicidium. After that, there was the auto-proclamation of Wimbledon. When the Venezuelan voters have, he auto-proclaimed it in a position, and several of the European governments and the Western Hemisphere said that he was the president. Something that has never been seen before. I want to say it in a strong way. Anywhere you look at, this has not happened. All of this that I'm saying here, I could give you an infinity of examples. There are not precedents in the world about this. Maybe there is one case of a fascist that caused thousands of deaths. People who were murdered in stadiums. What do you think that could happen if the Carmona have a state would happen? The same would have happened. But this was not typical. They have resorted, and I'm gonna make emphasis in what has happened previous to the July the 28th, which is the summer of all this. After this person, this was the cause that for in several countries they took our gold, which is calculated approximately $1,000 million in Portugal. Several inputs stolen from Venezuela and given a small percentage to an interim government that stole and committed crimes against the nation. And finally, as we can see, they also tried and coup d'etat. And when we thought that there couldn't be something else, the Hedian operation of May of the 2020 year came, where they used mercenaries that came from Colombia. And there were two red points there, came from the Civil Corps, where weirdly, I don't know why, 4 years after our denounces against the owner of that mercenary person, he was arrested just now, 4 years after. And he was arrested supposedly for being vinculated to traffic. In the middle of the pandemic, Venezuela couldn't buy medical inputs for COVID. In spite of that, we had the support of Russia and Cuba to achieve that Venezuela was one of the countries with less victims from COVID. We even worked with the United Nations to avoid that those inputs were used to fight COVID. Ask me, isn't it that part of neo-fascism? What is it to you? It does not have to be the same way that Hitler did. No, things change. Here they say that the extermination that Israel is doing against Gaza is not fascism, Zionism. But as the news channels say, it's a war between two armies. That's fake. It's a genocide, where the most powerful weapons to exterminate are used. to eradicate absolutely a population. The figure is getting close to 40,000 million people, million of children and newborns, teenagers, the ones that have been saved, have been sent to, even in the election of the July 28th, 100 people in Palestine were killed, and nobody said anything. In that case, they make of the extermination in Gaza a blessed war, since it's a blessed state and it has the right to kill. I'm asking, international organisms that protect human rights have avoided this to happen since 2023? The answer is no. We're a year apart and they're going to Rafah. Between all this that I'm saying is Venezuela. And what happened the 28th, 29th, and 30th of July, my fellow ambassadors, has no forgiveness. Has no justification. It doesn't matter if they look for influencers with billions of views and likes. They couldn't achieve their purpose, because this is also part of the hybrid war. You hire an influencer to use this influencer for brainwashing the population. And finally, an invasion, a genocide, a magnicidium. As we know, they have done it. In the action of the past Saturday, the callings were of hate since specific places. In the case of Europe, it was relevant what happened in Madrid. In the United States, what happened in Miami. Those were the two most important, impressionant polls of hate discourses that were achieved against peace. But not only that, in the middle of everything that has happened, I have to narrate that something important, how this action was prepared. The fraudulent elections of 2023 in October. And I interview all the national commissions in the primary schools as investigated and imputed. Surprisingly, the primary commissions were the president of SUMARE, who was the founder of this since 20,000 years, Maria Corina Machado. When I interview this person, they talk about the proceedings. I asked him, you have said that this person had almost 3 million votes. We are several days apart of this event. We want to see the proceedings. This person was very nervous, stuttering, and finally collaborated, giving important information to the public ministry, and said something very important. All of these proceedings were burned 2 hours after closing the voting centers. Burned, incinerated. All the voting records were burned the same day. Do they have moral to talk about voting records? Since the voting records were burned 2 hours after closing the primary schools. I'm going to quote a member of the primary, Nelson Campesar. He calculates that only 500,000 people attended. I'm talking about a member of the National Commission of Primaries. He quit since he didn't want to be involved in this. The official figures that we could verify as a state, since we had to make sure that there was not violence in this action, we said that we're only 300, 400 people, but they said that we're 2,050,000. The system that they used in primary school commissions was took to a better moment to. Since the beginning, they said there would be fraud. I asked myself a question and also to the diplomatic commission. In your countries, is there if you're inscribing and presented witnesses table, you are accepting the rules of the game imposed by the electoral power. That is obvious. Now you inscribe, and after you say, without making a campaign, I've been candidate to deputy in other occasions. Doing a campaign is doing a campaign. That candidate didn't do it. He was used by someone with a hate message, promising violent actions against the law, against the people who were supposedly being derogated. I asked Jesus Maria Casal and the Vice President, why do you inscribe in a National Commission of Primary someone handicapped? If this person is handicapped, it makes no sense that is inscribed. Tell me if in the countries here present, a political leader calls for coup d'etat, military interventions, and alliances with neo-fascist groups, and all of a sudden, nothing happens. This, what happened on July 28th, had all of this that I've been saying, using. I will conclude here to show you a video, very important, to get to the extreme violent situation of violence, Zionism, and fascists. I mean, you inscribe a candidate, but you say that this person is not going to accept the results. Then why did you inscribe it? If you're going to say that it's a fraud since October. They said that they inscribed it being handicapped. That is not correct. That is not democracy. That happens in failed states where there's no institution. The blackmail didn't happen. And they then said it was a fraud and attacked the system of for counting votes. A very famous hacker gave information about how did he hack the national system, but the objective was not achieved, which was total blackout of the data system. Data attacked, but the intent was to cause a blackout to avoid knowing who won the elections a month after. The results were given in real time. What happened on July the 29th after 6 p.m. till 10 p.m.? Something incredible. Literally, from all the victims, 70% were murdered by criminal groups. None of them were part of civilians and military officials vinculated to the state, any of them. We have not a single denounce. Denounce are given in the public ministry. We don't have any of those victims. If they would have given, we would have acted. I had a participation in a Council of State last week, and we had counted 25 victims. We must add 2. Why? Since victims were involved in 2 fatal accidents that were heading to their home, and they were murdered with the circumstances. I want you to see this video where you can see the damage they caused in real time to the Venezuelan people. 70% between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. of July 29 and the morning of July the 30. You can calculate what could have happened if this would have lasted months. Let's watch the video.
significa? Ajá. Muestro la foto. Muestro la foto. Bueno, esto no deja de ser,
Well, this is
aparte
definitely
muy sensible, muy impactante,
something very sensitive,
extremadamente
extremely
doloroso
painful,
y obviamente despreciable.
and despicable.
Yo estoy aquí mostrando apenas
I'm here showing barely
en tiempo real
in real time,
menos de 5 minutos
less than
de
5 minutes
180 videos
of 180 videos
que el Ministerio Público tiene en su
that the
poder,
public ministry has
que explican la manera de
that
cómo
explain the
estas
way in which
personas
these people
actuaron
acted
en contra
against
de sus propios compatriotas,
their own fellows,
propiedades pertenecientes al Estado, incluso
that belong,
también a personas
properties that
vinculadas
belong to the
con
state,
una orientación política, en este caso al chavismo.
even to
Entonces, yo quiero que
the people involved.
me digan acá
I
si nada
want
más
that
fue fascismo lo de
you
Hitler
here tell
en
me
Alemania,
if
el método que él hizo.
fascism of Hitler was only in Germany.
Modalidades de fascismo,
Are there new
que no hay.
modes to represent fascism? Why not? Because it's Venezuela. Venezuela has richness, the greatest of the world in oil, gas,
En agua,
water,
en todo tipo de minerales.
every kind of
Y
minerals.
entonces hay que entregárselo regalado
And then we have to
a
give
una
this
superpotencia mundial
to a super
y su
powerful
satélite. Si no me lo das
powerhouse world
regalado, como era antes del año
nation.
99, entonces esto es lo que te pasa.
If you don't give me this for free, then this is what happens.
Prólogo, y lo que
What I
terriblemente
briefly described here
aquí apenas acaba de ocurrir hace 3 semanas.
and what happened here terribly 3
Estos
weeks ago.
rostros
These faces
tienen nombre, tienen apellido.
have a
No
name
pueden ser
and a last name.
usados
They cannot be
por
used
sus asesinos.
for their murderers.
Oigan bien,
Listen,
porque esto es doblemente crimen.
this
Que
is
después que tú
twice a
los
crime.
matas,
After you
dicen
kill
que
them,
son personas a las
they
cuales tú
say
le vas a llevar una ofrenda floral.
they are
Cuando tú
people
los mandaste a matar.
where they are going to give them floral offer when they were the ones
Estos son
who
unos
ordered to
mártires
kill
del
them.
pueblo de
This is
Venezuela,
incredible.
inocentes.
These are innocent martyrs
Por
of the
todas las
Venezuelan
evidencias
people
hechas, se las describiré.
who died.
Hemos colocado aproximadamente 60 expertos del Ministerio Público
We have placed
solamente
60
dedicados
experts
a
of
este
the
tema,
public ministry just to
actualizando cada día todo lo que
analyze
ha
this
venido
topic.
ocurriendo. Pero estos son los rostros
But these are the faces
de esas violencias.
of this violence.
Ya lo pudimos difundir en su momento, nadie
We
conocía estos rostros, hablaban de cifras,
promulgated this
pero no,
and nobody knew them.
no las mostraban.
We were talking
porque
about
no les
figures,
importa. Yo lo que
but
les
they didn't
importa
show it
es
because they don't care.
magnificar.
What they care about
Eso
is
sí, caso venezolano.
about the
En Gaza lo que
magnification.
está muriendo es
This is Venezuela, but in Gaza,
gente, no son seres
what
humanos.
are dying are dogs, literally, not human beings.
Si les importa tanto los derechos humanos, ¿por qué
Because
la
if
semana
if
del
they
derecho
care
humano
about
y genocidio
human
en
rights
Gaza
so much,
no pararon?
why a week after genocide in Gaza they
¿Por qué
didn't
no
stop this?
llevaron a la justicia
Why they didn't
global a Netanyahu?
give Netanyahu in front of global justice? He mocked
Todos los
everybody,
diplomáticos de la tierra, porque
every diplomatic
reclamaron
in the
no menos
world.
de 100 veces en el Congreso de Estados Unidos.
He
Lo
was
aplaudían por matar.
applauded for murdering, for hurting,
Exterminar a un pueblo
for
inocente.
exterminating
Entonces
an
yo me
innocent
pregunto,
population. Then I ask
¿cuántos
myself,
son
aren't these
víctimas del fascismo
victims
venezolano?
of Venezuelan fascism?
Tenemos su nombre, tenemos
We
su
have their
apellido.
names, their last names.
Hemos ido visitando poco a poco
We have been visiting
las casas
little by little bit their houses,
de sus padres.
the house of their parents.
Aquí hay muertos
Here we
por
have
disparos,
people killed by shots,
por objetos contundentes.
hit by objects,
Vean que
killed
no
by
hablan
knives.
de las dos líderes.
They don't talk about the
Una
two
muerta en Bolivia, otra muerta
Chavez
asesinada,
leaders murdered
ambas
in
en
Bolivia,
Aragua, por crímenes de odio,
murdered
solo
both in
por ser
Aragua
dirigentes populares en
for
sus
hate
sectores.
crimes, just for
Fueron
being popular
asesinadas
directors
de
in
la
their
manera más vil.
sector.
Es como
They were
la
murdered
mezcla de lo que
in
puede
the
hacer un
cruelest
Franco
way.
en una cárcel.
This is like a mixture
Que era
of what
mínimo al lado de
could
eso.
have happened in
No hablan de
a
esas
jail.
mujeres fallecidas.
They don't talk about these women who died,
¿Por qué no las coloca?
like if they don't
Tienes que colocarlas
matter.
obligatoriamente.
Why don't you mention them? You have to do it
De derechos humanos.
for
Tenemos su nombre, tenemos su apellido.
the human rights organizations. We have their names. We know where they live.
Y quiero mostrárselo a todos ustedes
And I want to show it to all of you
de una forma muy clara
in a clear way
para que no olvidemos que
so that you don't forget that
en apenas
In-
4 horas
in barely 4
del
hours
día 29 de abril,
of the day,
el
July the
70%
28th,
de todo esto que estoy mostrando aquí
70% of all this that I'm
fue
showing
asesinado.
was murdered.
Un poder de fuego y de crimen jamás visto.
A power
¿Por
and a
qué?
crime
Porque
power
utilizaron delincuentes,
never seen before. Why?
capturaron personas de mala
Since they
conducta,
used
capturaron
criminals,
personas que en su
people
barrio
with
sabían
criminal
previamente
behavior.
podían prestarse.
They used people that they knew that could
Muchos de los detenidos, ¿saben lo que dicen?
use
Me
for
dieron
this.
$20.
We have interviewed the detainees and they say, well, they give me $20. Why?
En una moto lanzar una bomba molotov de las que vimos
To cause disturb
aquí. Calculen si yo le voy a
in a
poner
street.
a ustedes 180 videos. Bueno, terminamos hasta mañana.
Calculate if I show you the 180 videos we finished tomorrow.
Hablando groserías,
And what you see there are people talking,
ustedes han visto una manifestación
cursing.
pacífica. Claro que todos las hemos visto.
Do you have
Una
seen a
manifestación
Pacific
pacífica,
manifestation?
va una
Of course.
marcha, llega una plaza,
Pacific
uno o dos
manifestation
oradores dan un discurso y se
is
retiran. Pero no hacen
people giving a speech and they withdraw, but they don't do
Yo quisiera mostrar también,
this, what I mentioned. Apart from this, I want to show also,
hablaré de los heridos.
if we're going to talk about violence,
Por ejemplo,
see this,
imágenes de
images.
destrozos. Esto es un breve collage, ojo, un breve collage.
This is a
Destrozos
small collage
policiales.
of
Tiene que ver, pregunto yo, con
destroying policial
llamada
stations.
manifestación o protesta que usted vaya a quemar unos módulos policiales.
What does this to do with a manifestation of a protest?
Alcaldías. Las alcaldías. Un alcalde es electo por el voto popular porque usted le va a quemar la sede de su función.
Burning a town hall.
Porque es adverso
Why do you
a la oposición.
want to burn a town hall? Because they are against
¿Qué tienen que ver, pregunto
part of the
yo,
opposition.
con un tema electoral?
What does it has to do with an electoral matter?
Vean todo
The fact that they are burning pharmacies
en todo el país.
in the whole country.
¿Qué tiene que ver el partido de gobierno
What has to do
con que le quemen
the
sus
party
sedes?
of the government
Supuestamente
with their
dice que fue a unas elecciones y aceptó la regla del juego. ¿Por qué usted tiene que hacer esto? ¿Por qué usted tiene que monumentos históricos? Ustedes sabían que muchos monumentos que fueron declarados
the party's giveaway being burned?
patrimonio cultural,
Very
muchas de las
historical
aquí presentes
monuments
fueron derribados.
being destroyed.
¿Están enterados de eso?
Are you informed about this? What does has to do
Monumentos históricos, incluyendo el del padre de la
destroy
Marcha
historic
Simón Bolívar,
monuments,
el de Beato, José
including the one of Simon Bolivar,
el del presidente Hugo Chávez. ¿Qué
the one of the
tiene que ver
president Hugo
con un
Chavez?
tema
What does has to do
supuestamente
with
electoral?
electoral matter?
Unidades para proteger al pueblo que son
Units to
motocicletas
protect
y
the people, motorcycles
camionetas de la policía
and trucks
quemadas
of the police burned entirely.
totalmente. ¿Para qué?
Why? What for?
Unidades de transporte público, incluyendo el
Units
metro,
of public
vandalizaron
transportation, even the subway. They vandalized the subway.
Y me repregunto,
I ask myself,
me respondo,
and I
¿tiene
answer
esto que ver
myself,
con una manifestación pacífica que
does it has to do with a public manifestation restricting public transportation from people. They was shameless. Centers to provide food were vandalized so that social programs had no effect. Even belongings from people were destroyed. There was a case of someone who published a hate video against the president, and then she showed that her place was burned. CNN electoral power, where they inscribed as a candidate, but then after they burned the CNE, just vandalized several parts of public ministry, and also educational institutions were destroyed. I want you to say if this has an excuse and why. What is the excuse to kill, to say after? This is very important what I want to say. They can't deny myself. No one can deny what I'm saying. They can't. The research that we have done have been concrete, and we have given responsibility. They use this name, comanditos, which has a military name. They took people and vinculated to this, to use people that for these events that happened in July the 28th. When the traitor that was before me in this position, there was inaction of not arresting anybody. This would have been last 4 months. Its proportion was just 25 people murdered. How many victims would have been if this would have lasted several months? Easily 2,500 people could have died. 8,000 hurt. But in a day and a half, we stopped this action from the root. And apart from showing the videos and pictures, I want to say they attacked 21 schools, 21 primary schools, 7 schools, 7 high schools. What that has to do with a pacific fight with they attacked also 10 CNE institutions, which is an institution that give the possibility of people to have a house. They attacked several town halls. Regarding public transportation, 11 subway stations were attacked, 38 bus stations, 12 police cars, and 15 motorcycles. Regarding medical institutions, pharmacies and medical institutions were attacked. Institutions that provide food. 25 monuments, 27 monuments. Some of them collaboration of with several embassies as a symbol of cultural patrimony. Jose Gregorio Hernandez Monument, Cacique Coromoto, and several touristic places and attacks of the statues of Simón Bolívar and Hugo Chávez, and cyber attack against 25 national domains. The system Patria is amongst this. I could mention the case of Mayaury Silva, who was cruelly murdered. We have the detainees who even confessed who paid them. What does has to do in an electoral matter that you kill security guards? They killed 2 security guards in the cruelest way, Sergeant Jose Torres and also National Guard Jordan Martinez, murdered in the cruelest way as a result of their terrorist mind. I explained to you also the place and how people, some of them are detainees. They used small weapons in the middle of the dark. They were not organic weapons, part of the state institutions. Normally, in any situation where the opposition has committed violence act, they have go to the public ministry to denounce, and we have do some research in those denounces. And apply a sanction to the guilties. Look at this, what has happened today. Fuser News Astra publicly assumed hacking the CNE system during the Venezuelan elections. He used the name of Astra. Renowned person in cybersecurity. He revealed the existence of a cyber plan against the electoral system of Venezuela. This is a dirty game. Do you like that in one of your countries something similar happened? Destroy the national system to cause murders and hurt, and destroy the government to using that violence. Obviously, the Venezuelan state defended itself. There was a response to this attack. The system for counted data was slower, but however, we avoid the attack. And the results were exposed at midnight of July the 28th. Those are the results. The organization in charge for this is the National Electoral Council. I ask you, ambassadors, in your countries, do you accept that anonymous people buy a web page against through an online platform called Amazon and place to justify this terrorism wave. How do you call this? Can you say that this is a pacific manifestation? French May or pacific manifestations against the Vietnam War? That's a lie. We cannot qualify that like that. Then I show this and say, that the plan had several sides. One of them was place the page using criminal actions. They didn't calculate that this would last 1 day and a half. Their plan was that this would last more, and we would have been counting deaths even today. Have you seen that page? All of the voting, all of the voting records are blurry. Signs are all the same. In a referendum against Chavez happened the same. These are people that have been getting ready for this. I invite you to inform your governments of this that I've been briefly talking about. Inform the president, which includes an institution for human rights that has worked with us for these cases. We need to take into consideration not what an influencer has said. A drunk influencer saying that he has the voting records, and when you asked him, he said, no, I didn't vote. This is duration. More than 85% says, I didn't vote. And when you ask them, they say that they were paid money. They were they were convoked through WhatsApp groups. Summoned through WhatsApp groups. To finish, I would like to say that it's very important cooperate with justice and with the truth as Venezuela. I've been in several gatherings of this kind in Venezuela and abroad, and what I have watched of the Venezuelan state in the multiple positions that I have had since president of the Foreign Affairs Commissions that gave me the possibility to visit several places in the world. As a people's defender, the deep respect that the Venezuelan state, our ambassadors, our ministers of foreign affairs, the deep respect that they have for the self-determination of a people and a state. I ask for reciprocity. With all due respect, I have done meetings here with Ivan Hill, Minister of Foreign Affairs, in similar situations. And I believe that respect is essential. Respect of national sovereignty, respect of the truth. Beyond the truth, not only that, but also the lie of influencers and YouTubers that worth more than 100 expertise. are worth more than 200 diligence. We're not going to accept this. I can say to you that this report, I have barely done a brief summary of a report with several videos, but we have done a summary of just 55 pages because we have now the opportunity, Minister of Foreign Affairs present, to show this truth to the whole world. There's a Venezuelan saying that says, if you don't know, you don't fear. People against democracy have shown lies, but they have mocked the victims that they murdered, that they try to murder. But I can say that not only these 27 that I said were, there were also 190 hurt in just 1 day and a half. But you know what? Approximately 100 are members of the police and military force hurt by these criminals. So I invite you to pray for the peace for Venezuela, for the truth, and you can
con el cuerpo diplomático acreditado en el país.